Hello Proponomics people, and this is a short summary of the Sunday supplement that was posted on the 5th of May 2024. And this week it was called Sideways and Slowly Upwards because I think that's going to encapsulate well the property market, certainly of the first half of 2024. Still a lot of people who think the first cut on interest rates is coming in August or perhaps even in June's Bank of England meeting. I'm still not convinced of that myself because I don't think that the figures that are going to come out after we've had some positive figures for April, which are going to be reported next week, are going to be particularly better. I think we're going to bounce off that low inflation print and we're going to go back to realising just how much of an inflation problem we've got. But could be wrong, and I hope to be wrong, to be honest with you. Let's see. Lots of preeminent economists disagree with me on that one. Anyway, summary of this week's supplement. So the housing market's stable. There's nice phrases being used, such as the most stable market since the pandemic. I think really that's what buyers and sellers and everybody really wants. That's the best functioning market, not something that's zooming up outside of all control, because that creates bubbles. But at the moment, you've got to appreciate the fact that wages are moving up 6% a year and house prices are not going to be moving up 6% a year from here in the next 12 months. A lot of that is also to do with being derailed by the election, but we do need those interest rates to come back down, the 5-year bond yields to come back into the sort of 3.5 and lower range, I think, in order to see some real sustained improvement in pricing. But keep paying people more, and they will pay more for property, because we all know people, first-time buyers especially, base things on how much they can borrow rather than how much anything costs per month. What's what they can borrow being constrained by at the moment? It's being constrained by the cost of that debt, cost of that mortgage. So that's where we are. But a lot think interest rates are going to remain around that 4.5% mark. That was from Richard Donnell in the Zoopla April price report, house price index report. And I'm inclined to agree with him. That feels about right in terms of where interest rates will be. I think we could lose 0.25% off that, maybe even 0.5% that towards the end of the year. But we're going to have to see how the gilt yields play out. And of course, by then, that will only impact 2025's activity anyway. And then we had the Bank of England credit report this week, which showed mortgage approvals up again, stayed above the 60,000 number. The real key number is sort of 65 to 70 if we want a really balanced and fair market. I think from the historical data that I see, that's where we need to be. We're not far off that at all, but there were fewer remortgages in March than there were in February. So it's not all super positive. It's just moving sideways, as I've been saying, really. And also the money supply is expanding again. So we were at 0.6 month on month for February. We were at 0.7 month on month for March. These aren't numbers that we want to see if we want to be down to a stable 2% inflation environment, folks, I'm afraid. And then we had the best week for house price sales. That was the week that ended April the 28th. We're always running a week behind with those figures, but pretty good real-time stats. I've said before, I listen to and follow Chris Watkin on social media. He posts those week in, week out. They're great stats, really, really useful. House prices down slightly compared to a year ago, according to Zoopla, that is. Slightly up if you look at the nationwide statistics. There's really not a lot in it. We're talking plus minus 1% from 2023 on all the indices. Let's see what the ONS do, because they printed the lowest number for 2023, which is minus 2.2%. But I think we're going to see that come back and a little bit better as we get into the figures that are published sort of June, July, August by the ONS. But time will tell. PMIs also got crystallised. The service sector printed a 55. That's the hottest since, fastest rate of growth since May 23, and is a really quite a hot reading. Economy's doing well. If anything, people will be looking at putting rates up, not down, in this environment if you were just looking at the services PMIs. But cost of living is still impacting first-time buyers. 87% cited that as being a major problem over the last 12 months in terms of actually buying a house and why they've delayed purchases. Perhaps not a massive surprise, but of course, with wage growth at 6 and inflation now, they think next week is going to print 2.1%. I've been a little bit higher in my predictions, but I still am in the low 2s for that print because so much is coming off thanks to the energy side of things. So we're going to see a print in the low 2s. What will the reaction be to that, and how much of a one-off is that? We have to wait another 4 weeks to find out, unfortunately, because that's how the figures reporting works. And the ONS have reported public sector productivity 6.8% below where it was before the pandemic. So some of Jeremy Hunt's noises around this area and finding that productivity again, you can see where his logic is coming from, actually. It's not just rhetoric. We do need to get that productivity back up. The sector's had a tough time. It's had a tough time over the times of austerity, apart from anything else. But through the worst of the pandemic, hopefully we'll get through the waiting lists one way or another. I think it's probably fair to say we're more likely to get through them if Labour do get elected. But let's see, because the Conservatives will need to come up with a plan that at least sounds as good as what Labour's plan is. Otherwise, they really have got no chance in the next election. Although we know it's unlikely, there's chat of a hung parliament this week, which is being taken, somewhat seriously, or certainly being considered. So I think, post-election, the market's going to pick up again, because markets hate uncertainty, and that election, when it's announced, will give it a wobble. And we're getting close now to a point where an election is going to be announced. Okay, might be a few more months before we get an announcement, but we're getting close. And every week, we get a week closer, of course. I don't see prices falling significantly. And I'm in agreement that, generally speaking, mortgage rates are going to stay pretty stable from here. I don't see anything massively influencing it. It's that sludgy range that I've been talking about, and staying roughly the same, with some ups and downs depending on what other central banks do. I always think there's an overemphasis on what the other central banks are doing, to be honest, although it does change our bond yields in fits and starts when things happen in the USA, apart from anything else. People are saying inflation is expected to fall in the coming months. That's what I don't really agree with. I think we're going to definitely see this fall for April reported in May, but I'm not convinced that that's a fall that's going to stay there and we're going to go below target or anything like that. I'm not seeing it. I never was seeing it. But let's see what happens. And as I say, I'd love to be wrong, because I'd be a beneficiary of being wrong in this case, but I wouldn't be saying this stuff unless I thought I was right, of course. So that's where we were on the supplement this week. Analysed that Zoopla report, analysed a couple of ONS reports that were quite useful, and talked about the usual macro indicators and where we're at. And we've got the Bank of England meeting coming this week, which I'm sure the report on the Bank of England will feature heavily in this week's supplement. So look forward to that. Thank you.